Good evening, we are back. Welcome to this week's Loose Links as we have the hot topics and debate of all this news the last week with you involved and a bit of chit chat from the panel. All that on tonight's show. Welcome back to Loose Links, a brand new episode. It's so good to have you. And let's welcome the panel of love that are with us this evening. That's Claire Brown in May.
Hello.
That's Sam J. Hitwell.
Good evening.
And that's Vicky Pearson.
Hi.
No Rachel Penny this week. You all shocked? She's usually one of the panel. As we discuss, as we sit back in our hot seats and have a chat this week about a woman that is suing the NHS while she was in prison, not being supported, and later diagnosed with a mental health condition. But we discuss, should we be looking at that, at reoffenders? Should be going down the road of mental health. Also, we are in the land of love this week, so we talk about age gap relationships. Is it still frowned upon? And is cougar and toy boy still allowed to be said? And we finish on the subject of that man from Boston that escaped prison. But we talk about, do you think the streets are no longer safe for our children? All that and a lot more on this week's Loose Links. Good evening, panel.
Good evening.
Lovely start. Vicky disappears.
My camera's just, sorry. My camera's just.
It goes on. Let's just talk. How are we all? Was you flooded, Claire Brown, in May with cards through your door last week? Were you absolutely piled up?
Not even
No.
But I did get a beautiful
Just saying,
thing.
Claire, I didn't get any either, so don't worry about it.
It's always quite difficult, that Valentine's Day, I feel, only because it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's great if you're in love and you're in a relationship and it's amazing and it's fantastic. Oh, Vicky's reappeared.
Vicky.
But it's not so nice when you're on your own, is it? It's not. So it's a really difficult day for some. But we've got lots to talk about this week. So you ready, ladies?
Yep.
Because
Bring it on.
I want to
Bring it.
Me and Claire go head to head on disagreement on a subject. Me and Claire never fall out, so I think it's time that we do. So let's see how we get on. So this week's first topic is about a woman that has been in and out of jail for nearly a century. And she's suing the NHS because she doesn't feel like she was mentally supported by them while in prison. On a later date, nearly a decade on from being in and out of jail, she's been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. So this got us talking. Claire, do you think the mental health world has been forgotten about in such a crisis as COVID? Do you think that we are now looking and waiting for the mental health crisis to arrive?
I think it's really difficult because mental health has always been there, but again, since it's really affected a lot of people, and maybe not. They probably don't realise that they've got mental health. So I think as of now, yes, there's lots of people, and I think it will get worse before it gets better. And it, like you're saying, as the NHS forgot about it, it's really difficult because, the NHS has had a lot going on, to try and deal with the situation that we've been in to keep people alive and that. And I think mental health has had a backstep. So it's just really a difficult one. you know, I like I say, it's all about money, isn't it? And you know, the billions that's been put in over the past 2 years. And I think hopefully once the COVID won't go away, but once it calms down, you know, there'll be more money to put into NHS for mental awareness and people who've got it.
But in the UK, do you find, especially in the UK, that we are always one step behind? So what I mean by that is, Vicky, let's go to you about this question, because there's always added on questions if they're in a topic. But don't you find that really it has almost, people, like, our hospital beds are still full, they're still overflowing when it comes to the mental health world. There's still people, thousands of people waiting to be seen by therapists. Do you think that we should have been thinking a little bit more in the mental health world when it came to the crisis of COVID?
Well, I think a big problem we have is politically we have this attitude to everything that's firefighting, because nothing is really, there's no deep planning going on. There's no in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years time at all. It's all about the next election and keeping in power, and having their party in power, which just causes a lot of problems because everything's reactionary. There isn't, and I do think a lot of the people at the top really, they've not got the mental capacity to think that big and to make it a priority, and a lot of them have never been in a situation where they would need to use the NHS, where they would need free support and they don't have the money to pay for private support, or you know, that they don't have a lot of the issues as well that cause mental health, so things like poverty, homelessness, domestic abuse, you know, various things that happen. A lot of those, you know, don't affect people who've got a lot more money, I guess. So yeah, 100%. But I mean, I don't think it's COVID is the reason we don't have funding for mental health. We had a mental health crisis. We've always had a mental health crisis. We've never not had a mental health crisis. I mean, all they really offer at the moment is CBT, or in very extreme cases, and I'm talking not even people who've committed suicide, who've attempted to commit suicide, get access to mental health support that they need. They're turned away, they're sent to hospital, make sure they're not, you know, gonna die, and then they're kicked out the door at the moment, or they spend a night in a police cell. I mean, that's what we do to people that try to commit suicide at the moment. You know, and unfortunately recently I was experienced in helping somebody that was the exact situation. You know, so it is a huge problem. I gave up on the NHS mental health support many years ago because it's just one solution fits all, and if you don't fit that solution, then they tell you they can't help you and they turn you away, you know. So again, I've spoken a lot about my favorite place in Lincoln, Mint Lane, you know, who do an amazing service, and they've got a huge waiting list already of people who have been turned away from the NHS or are struggling to find what they need, who've got specific histories of trauma and domestic abuse, and that's what they specialize in, is like the really severe stuff, the life experiences, the severe life experiences, rather than things like schizophrenia or, you know, the actual what you'd call a mental health condition as such. It's more a reactionary condition. So there is a huge problem, you know, and charities are really struggling to pick up slack, and I think there's just, it all needs sorting out, really. I think the more money needs to go into all of it. I mean, the NHS is so cash starved. I mean, when you take into inflation, they like all these fancy words to say funding's increased year upon year, but when you actually add in inflation, it's decreased year upon year when you add that in, you know. So, and this is a huge problem, and a lot of people don't really understand the economic situation over this country. We have an economic system called the fiat economic system that runs the country, which is very different to what we do with managing a household budget. So they look at how much money they can create out of thin air. That would impact on the general rates of inflation in the country, and they use that money to fund various services. So it isn't a case of increasing taxes, or when money's not spent on COVID beds, it can go on mental health, because it doesn't work like that. It's ring fenced for very specific purposes, and the money just is created. It literally is created on a computer. We got rid of our gold reserves in the early 90s. You know, it is all done on this system. There is no reason why we are in this situation other than personal preference from those people currently in power.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much. I think Vicky, we said this in the green room last night. Vicky is our book of knowledge, honestly, and she's so good at it. I send an email out every single week with every topic and every question. Vicky never reads the email. She never reads what we're going to talk about, but she just comes out like with stuff like that. But I do want to follow a bit about that a little bit, because do you think in the NHS world, from my personal view of the NHS mental health world, is that I'm quite happy to share I spent time in hospital over mental health before, and my 20s was really terminal. It was really not a nice time for me. I had 10 years on and off of hell, basically. And the last time I went into hospital, it was me that sat down with a nurse and basically said, you need to do something about this, because honestly, and luckily I had the strength to do it, 4 or 5 days in bed, not talking to anybody in the hospital bed. I won't go into it because it's some horrendous stories that I've gone through in hospital, and I don't want to, this is a family show, I don't want to go down the nitty gritty of what I went through, but I remember sat in a side ward with a nurse and saying to them, this is it, I'm not coming back into here again. You can't just medicate me up, make sure I'm fed and send me off again, because I'm learning nothing. I'm learning nothing about resilience. I don't know why my brain is doing this and why it's allowing it. And it was me that stepped forward. And that, because I said it, because I said, this is what I want, I then got a psychotherapist. I was diagnosed with a mental health disorder. But Claire, do you think a lot of people are just slipping through the net?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because you like you've just said, asked them, told them what you wanted, whereas other people just don't know. Do you know what I mean? They go down and down and down into this, what I can imagine. I have been there before, and it's awful. And unless you don't cry out for help, then nobody will come looking for you and give you it. So you do literally just fall through the net.
I mean, I'm one of those that fell through the net because I was referred to the mental health service and they put me on the CBT. As Vicky said, that's all they do, put you on CBT. And my therapist says, oh, your case is too complex for me, so I'm going to send you on to someone else. So got sent on to someone else, and I discussed what I've been doing to help with my mental health and things like that. And he just turned around to me and he said, well, you're doing everything that we would have suggested, so there's nothing else we can do. And then discharged me, and that was it. And then last year, I had 3 breakdowns last year.
Keep talking, Sam, keep talking.
I had 3 breakdowns last year, and which were triggered by life's, things going on. I lost a friend just over a year ago now, and it triggered two of the meltdowns I had. I had 2 meltdowns within 3 days. And I phoned my doctor, and she didn't really know what to do with me, and she was surprised I didn't have a mental health team. So even now, I'm not getting help with my complex PTSD. I'm not getting help with it at all, and I do struggle. I mean, I have my assistance dog, who comes with me everywhere to help me with my anxiety attacks and panic attacks. But there's not a lot else I can do because I'm not getting the help.
Need to apply to Mint Lane. Go to Mint Lane.
I have. I'm on the list for Mint Lane. Okay. I'm already there.
So, we've got to talk about the positive side of mental health as well, because we are being quite negative on the NHS. So I wanted to share a little story, and I'm going to try really hard not to get emotional. So if I do, please excuse me, but I remember the last time of being in hospital, and I was laid in a bed in a ward with 4 other people. And I just spent, as I said to you briefly, I believe in the power of people. I really do believe in the power of people. And I was laid in bed, and it was 3-4 days of really, really struggling. And woke up on the 4th morning, and I remember I was turned to the wall, and I turned to the other side, and that was sat right next to me. Now, family members and friends, when you're on a mental health ward, cannot come to your bedside. They have to meet you in a side room and have a chat and stuff like that. So I was very, where's he come from? I don't understand where he's come from. And he means, this teddy bear absolutely means the world to me now, because I was sat there and a nurse came in. This is where it gets emotional. A nurse came in and I said, do you know anything to do with this? I don't know if somebody's, I don't want to be accused of stealing. Do you know anything to do with it? And this guy who was in the next bed, just came around the corner and said, I think you need him more than I do. And I just completely broke down, because I just thought, he doesn't even know me. He doesn't know my life story, but he can see that I'm suffering. And he wants to take a little bit of that suffering away. So now when I really struggle, I look at him, because he sits in my bedroom, and I think to myself, when I think I'm in a bad place, I'm not in that bad place anymore. And it's a constant reminder. And I think when you get to know people, there are glorious mental health stories where people have come bouncing back and stuff like that. And the NHS are doing their best. I'm not saying that they're absolutely rubbish, but I just think we should have been a little bit more prepared for COVID. But let's go on this story, Vicky. Let's go over to you. Did that without crying. Are you impressed?
Yeah.
Did it go through it without crying? I cry then.
That's crying. I'm not a crier, but I think
I am.
But so while you were saying that, while you were telling that story, I noticed that all three of us had this big grin across our faces as you were telling. I was like,
stories, isn't it? But Vicky, let's go back onto this main story here. So in this story, it shows after years of in and out of prison, this woman had a mental health disorder, which was finally looked at and pressured by her a decade later, 10 years down the line of being in and out of prison. Do you think we need to be looking harder at repeat offenders in the mental health stage?
They are, and it is very new. And I only know this because I have a friend who works in probation, and she specifically is one of the people tasked with exactly this issue. And she's worked over in another county at the moment. She used to live here and commute. And we spoke a lot, because this is why I know stuff. I just like talking to people and what they do and what they love, and I love that. And she was talking about how over the last couple of years they've created this, and I say created, I mean they've kind of confirmed, diagnosed or whatever, this mental health condition that specifically applies to institutionalization and repeat offending. And it is people that they have this thing that they just can't help themselves for whatever reason, and they end up in and out of prison, and it is such a common phenomenon, and they're doing a lot now to combat that. There's a team of 2 or 3 people per county, and I've spoken with her about Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire and Lincolnshire in particular with this. And I know I have a friend who she runs a business just out in Netlham. It's called No Reins, and she specifically works with equine assisted mental health support, and she does natural horsemanship. So a horse mirrors your emotions and your feelings, and they're very intuitive. Even when you're riding them, you get nervous, they get nervous. If you're around them and you feel nervous, they can get nervous. That's how they are as a herd. They kind of communicate that way. So if you go in there with a mental health condition, they mirror how you're feeling, and when you're working on things and improving, you can see the horse mirroring that and improving. She does a lot of work with that, and they have contacted her since I spoke about it, about introducing that service across the 3 counties, because there's a couple of centres that do it in each county. So the money's there, and they are now taking it seriously, and they're researching a lot of these kind of services, where they can provide support to people that will benefit from that support, and then they can stay out of prison. And I do think it's an area that does need a lot more investment. I think any frontline services, things that are at first step, like the intervention stage. We shouldn't just be relying on prison for things like criminal acts. We should be looking holistically at the whole thing, at drug abuse, at their personal situations, financial situations, housing situations, family history, history of abuse, of trauma, and providing that support for those people. Because in the long run, that will save money. That if you put a year or two's work into somebody and you get them to a point that they're happy and they're functioning and that they can contribute to society, that is far cheaper than spending 8-10 years in prison and then coming out for 5-6 months and then reoffending and then going back into prison. I mean, I just don't understand why we're not doing more of it, but they are, from speaking to this lady, that this is something they're looking at the moment.
Sam, do you feel, though, the mental health world falls upon our local authorities now more than ever? So when there's a mental health crisis, do you feel that the police are the first people on the line, really, dealing with every incident, because there's no other service out there, really, that will go visit a home, pick somebody up and maybe take them to see a medical profession that they really need to see?
Well, you see, obviously, or probably almost all the police aren't actually, aren't qualified to deal with, people with mental health issues. So it's difficult. I think it's a difficult one because obviously police don't know what's going on with that particular person until something happens. So I do think that, before they reoffend, I do, like Vicky said, they need to be they need that support when they come out, and I feel like that they need that support so then the police don't have to go out to them to pick them up again and to go through all that rigmarole and, No,
I think I'm off the subject of reoffending at the moment. What I'm talking about is that when somebody has a mental health crisis, I feel it falls on, it's almost like a police duty now. That they're the only ones picking people up from their homes that are in crisis or in crisis somewhere. They might have gone somewhere or a cliffside or whatever. And I feel that it's falling a lot on the police they are the frontline people of mental health at the moment.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but like I say, I think that obviously the police, like I said, they're not qualified to be doing this kind of stuff, but
there's no one else doing it though, Sam. There's no one else doing it.
They need something, I mean, it's like with Vicky saying, there's only 2 or 3 people in each county doing this, this thing with, with people that are reoffending and that. There needs to be more of that, because that's the kind of department that would be more qualified to pick up these people, to take these people to where they need to go. So I do think there needs to be more funding.
I don't know if I slightly disagree. Would you, if you were in crisis and someone knocked on your door that you didn't know and they said, right, I'm taking you to the hospital, would you happily jump in somebody's car that you didn't know? Or would you be more comfortable on jumping in a police car with authority to take you somewhere than some random stranger knocking on your door saying, I'm here to help, I'm here to take you to hospital?
I don't know, because it would feel like if I was to go in the police car, usually when people go in the back of a police car, they've been arrested.
Oh, not always nowadays. Not always nowadays.
And I don't know. That's a difficult one, because on the one hand, I won't want to be in the back of a police car. That's something that I really, something in my mind. I just don't want to be in the back of a police car. And I think, if a stranger turned up, but they had all their ID and all their papers and documents that say who they are.
But you're not in right mind to read that at that point. If someone's coming round to you for a crisis point thing, you're not going to be in right mind to read somebody's past and paperwork and all of that jazz, because you're in crisis. And what I'm saying is, I think a lot of it does fall on police. And I do agree with you. It's not right that it's falling upon police to deal with this. But actually, we're now waiting 6 hours for an ambulance. If we just call for a medical condition, if we just call for something that's happening. So can you really leave somebody in their house for 6 hours while an ambulance turns up? I wouldn't want to be that person. I want someone quick response there. Let's deal with the situation. Because you don't know how. I feel like I'm telling a lot of personal stories tonight, but one of my friends, I was in crisis a couple of years ago, and one of my friends turned up. I can't even remember her turning up. I can't remember her being there. I'm not going to say her name because she's on the show, but I can't even remember her being there. And she sat with me for 6 hours as she was calling ambulance after ambulance after ambulance to come and pick me up, to the point where she had to call the police and say, I've got no other option, he's getting worse. I can't tell you what I did that evening, but I nearly said her name then, but my friend said it was horrific. It was horrific to watch. So you need somebody quick response.
Yeah.
There and then.
I mean, I know what you mean about ambulance. I mean, there was one day I had really bad chest pains on my left side and I was struggling to breathe. And they says, oh, it could be anything up to 8 hours, you know, and I'm like going, yeah, but it's my left side. You know, what if I'm having problems with my heart? Because of the chronic illnesses that I have problems with my heart. And they were like, well, we haven't got an ambulance to send to you. And I'm just like, well, you know, it did turn out that that it was just muscle spasms that was just kind of like stopping me from breathing. It was kind of like the muscle spasms were just all tensing up around my rib cage, which was stopping my rib cage from expanding when I was breathing, which is why I was having problems. So luckily, you know, it wasn't problems with my heart, but it could have been. And yet they were saying 8 hours. And I says, well, if I'm having a heart attack or something, I could be dead in 8 hours. And they were like, well, yeah, kind of thing. And I'm like, then eventually, I think it was like 3 hours later, an ambulance turned up. And I'm just like, you know, that could have been a real emergency.
Exactly. But remember, you are the fifth panel member out there. We always kind of like a heated debate, but you could agree or disagree with any four of us on the panel. We love to hear from you. So make sure you have your say. Do you believe that it falls on the police to deal with mental health services at the first point of call? Also, do you believe that we need to be doing more work, or are you agreeing with Vicky that we are doing enough work at the moment to re-offenders and making sure that their mental state is looked at as well? Have you also make sure you have your discussion and say what you think. We love to hear from you. There's many ways of contacting us. We're on looselinks@gmail.com. We're on the Facebook group page, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I think that's it. www.looselinks.co.uk as well. I keep forgetting to say that, Vicky. I can't believe you don't knock me out every time I don't say that website, honestly. She's the one that created it. But let's move on. Claire, we're going into your specialised subject. Yes. We're going into love.
Yes.
But we're going to talk about this evening age gap love, and we've got an example here, and this flashed up on it was a Lincolnshire website that was talking about romance and love, and they mentioned many celebrities with age gap love, but I'm just going to use one example here. So Leonardo DiCaprio was starstruck by his girlfriend Camilla as he couldn't keep her eyes off her in the early days of their Caribbean break. The Wolf of Wall Street actor, 47, was packed on the beach with a 24-year-old beauty staring at her in amazement. She looked incredible in a very skimpy black bikini, which showed. So it did get me thinking, panel, about age gap love. So let's go to you first, Sam. Do you think we find it hard when we hear about age gap love? Would you still be worried for a friend if they said they had a partner 20 years older than them or 20 years younger than them?
No, I don't. I mean, I can't really say much really because one of my exes, the biggest age gap I've had with any of my exes is 16 years. So, you know, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's just how people perceive it. People perceive it as like, you know, a bit weird. But I just, as long as, you know, they're in love and they want, you know, and everything's right for them, I don't see a problem with it. Obviously, you know, if it's like a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old, that, you know, that would be a problem. But I do, you know, just a age gap, you know, like I said, 16 years, it's not that bad. But I just think it depends on the couple, to be fair.
Jen, well, let's personalise it then a little bit more. Claire, let's come over to you and say that if your son, who I believe is 18 now years old, if your son came home and said, Mum, I've got a new partner, but she's 36, how would you feel?
Good luck, mate. You know what? It's really difficult, because I always say you won't really know what you would say unless that situation happened. You know, again, I know my son, and if he brought someone home and I could see that he was really happy, would it matter how old she was? You know, and that's all you want for your children anyway, isn't it? You know, you want to see them happy, and if he was happy, same with my daughter. You know, I think you are a bit more protective of daughters than you are with sons. I mean, like,
why is that, though? I don't understand that.
No,
why is that?
Because women face a lot more problems. Every single woman I know has been a victim of sexual harassment and abuse. Every single woman.
But Vicky, without going again, Sorry, say again. Sorry, I overtalked then.
Men could not say the same. Every single woman I know has been a victim of this, and men cannot say the same. So as much as I hate sexism, I'm a massive, you know, feminist, and all of that, unfortunately, women have to protect each other. It's just the way we always have been.
Do you know, though, that saddens me.
It is very sad.
It's sad that we have to do that.
Sam, can I just say, it saddens me because, like, when I hear stories like that, and we're told to speak out so much and talk about stuff and speak out nowadays and stuff like that, when women say that to me, and this isn't a direct at all three of you, but any woman out there says, well, women need to be protected more, wear more, we need to look out for it, it makes my story of domestic abuse undermined a little bit. I feel like I can't then talk out and go, well, I've suffered domestic abuse. And are women persecutors of that, do you think? Do women almost look after each other a little bit more? It's two different
things, because the thing is with male domestic abuse that women don't have at all is the shame of men feeling that they've been in that situation because of how men are brought up, that, you know, that men are supposed to be tough, they're supposed to be quite masculine, or they're supposed to deal with stuff or be able to put up with more. I mean, I don't agree with that.
And they're supposed to have no emotions as well.
That's how they perceive it. So the shame and guilt they put on themselves in those situations is going to be a lot different and deeper than with women. You know, it's a whole different thing. I don't think you can compare it.
I do agree with you, Vicky. I do agree with you, but I disagree with you as well, because in the same respect, I really fight this argument all the time, because I really struggle with it, only because it happens a lot. I think it's a very old-fashioned way of thinking. I really do. I feel like we've come on so far, but we still have statements said like this. Because in a school setting, Claire, you'll be able to say, back me up on this, because you're in a school setting. When I was in a school setting working, and it's really hard to describe, but men, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it anyway, to begin with, but men was not allowed to change girls' nappies, but could change boys' nappies. But when it came to a female can change girls' nappies and can change boys' nappies. Well, to me, that's already indicating you're more of the persecutor than the female in the room. And I find that really, we're talking about men's mental health nowadays and stuff like that, but we have statements still said that, oh, women need to be protected a little bit more. Well, actually, I think sex and gender should completely go out of the window, and anybody that comes forward, anybody that says anything about, I think we're still looking at it very, very old-fashioned.
Yeah, definitely. It is looked at as old-fashioned, but I just think, like what the other two ladies have said as well. Oh, my mind's gone blank. That a lot of men won't come forward to, you know. So you might think that statistics, it's more females that are sexually, you know, assaulted or what, because men don't want to be shamed, because that's the way that they would feel that they would be, if that makes sense.
But we have statements like we've just said, though, Claire, and I can understand if statements are said like that about the female and protecting the female, and females need to be more protected. All we are doing is pushing our males into the cupboard. That's all we are doing. We're not supporting them to come out and say a lot more, and actually let's throw sex and gender out the window.
Yeah, I disagree. I think true feminism is about all sexes being treated equally. It isn't about women gaining anything. It's just everyone needs to be treated equally. And we're actually fighting for the end to toxic masculinity just as much as we're fighting for women's services. It is completely the same. That's how I view it anyway. And I know a lot of people that I know view it exactly the same. I think there's a lot men can gain from this and from working in this, and I think a lot of men as well, you know, it's not all men. I watched this video, I think it was fantastic video, and it was like, you know, it's not all men, and this comes out a lot, you know, and how difficult men are, but a lot of men know other men who are abusers, and a lot of them don't do anything about it. They don't actively do anything about it, you know. Some of them are distant, some of them won't even do that. To some degree, yeah, but this is what I'm saying is feminism is all sexes need to be treated equally, you know. So it is about promoting men's mental health services. It is about, I mean, I did a video on Facebook that, you know, I shared with Midlade, and they shared it too, calling out for men's mental health and how they need to speak out and they need to do this, and actually it's a sign of strength, you know, and that is just as important a message to deal with men's mental health and to deal with all of that anger and rage and that how they feel they should be in charge, and all of those emotions are really hard, and you can't improve women's lives until you also tackle that aspect. You can't do it one side only. You've got to do it all, because a lot of women have faced abuse because of men's inability and shame towards their own mental health and things they're struggling with, you know. So it is all equally as important.
Surely that's an equal thing. Surely women must feel the same as well. Women must feel, because it's almost like we're saying men feel shame. men feel the shame and all of this, but surely it's almost, I feel like we're almost in a world that men are always seen as persecutors. And I really struggle with that. It's like we've had a show on before with Rob Wells, who suffered. He came onto the show, and it was an incredible show. He discussed about being abused by a woman, and I quickly spoke up about, well, surely there's we've talked about it in the show before as well, Claire. You were on a show about it where we talked about women's houses and stuff like that, and the women's line is 24/7. 7 days a week, 24/7. The phone is picked up. The men's line is office hours, 9 till 5. Now, how are you telling me that's equal?
No, and it shouldn't be.
That's looking on both sexes as equal. Again, to me, it's crying out: men are more persecutors, women are more victims, and I really struggle with that.
What I don't get is why there's two different lines. If it's, you know, domestic abuse is domestic abuse. So why is there two separate lines? Why can't they, you know, just have one line for both sexes? I just don't get that, to be fair.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's hard,
Yeah.
and it's always going to be brought up. It's always going to be discussed.
If they combined them, there'd be, obviously it'd be 24/7, and men can call 24/7 as well. If they combined it, just have one line for both men and women.
I think I'm talking personally though, and that's why I'm so strong about it, because my domestic abuse relationship was 2012, 2013, and I finally came out to local authorities about it in 2016-17. Because I felt like every time I wanted to talk about it, I had a lot of these views thrown at me that, well, women are more victim and they're more likely to fall into. And I just thought, well, I'll just shut up then. I just won't say a word, because actually I'm not going to be believed here. Even though it was a same-sex relationship, I still think we've got a very long way to go before we're both at equal levels when it comes to abuse. Something to make you all think before we move on.
That shut us all up, didn't it?
Just a bit, but let's go a little bit lighter. Claire, you have got the favourite question of tonight, really. So, should we be getting rid of the sayings toy boy, cradle snatcher, and cougar? Because people might find it funny around people to call them a toy boy, a cradle snatcher, or a cougar. But actually, what if we're really hurting people inside when we're saying that and not even realising? Claire.
No, I know. I'm just thinking of the word.
Just thinking, I could see the cogs turning in her head.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything. I mean, you've got to be careful of what you say, because you can offend somebody by saying anything. A saying like that, like a cougar. I mean, if someone called me a cougar, I think I'd like that. Cradle snatcher. Yeah, okay. It's all on the individual. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bit of banter. It's a phrase, isn't it? And it's not meant intentionally to hurt somebody. It's just literally like, "Ooh, look at you little cradle snatcher," And
it's just a bit of banter, really.
Well, personally, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's not like I say, it's not. It's just a line that's been made up to like categorize you, and I'm saying it's not right or wrong. It's just something.
Yeah, I think it depends on the individual person that you're calling, because some may find it they might be offended by it, but others would be like, bring it on, love it, soak it up. But I just think it just depends on the individual that you're calling, because like I say, some may not like it. So
toy boy, I love a toy boy.
Well, I was in an age gap relationship a couple of years ago, nearly 20 odd years ago, and he was older than me, so he was 39, I was 21. There was quite an age gap, but it really didn't bother me. But his ex before that, who I'm not going to say on screen just in case he does watch the show, but his ex before that they went together to a telly store to buy telly, and the customer service guy looked up and said, "Are you father and son?" And I just would be mortified if somebody said that. But how about you, Vicky? Would you be comfortable in an age gap love?
I've never really been in that situation. I mean, talking about this before, my big issue is that my face looks 10 years younger than I am. And if I need to prove my age, I have to have 5 versions of ID, all with photographs and an address and fingerprints and everything. And still people are like, "No, you're not that old," And I've always been like that. I mean, honestly, when I was 18, when I got ID, I looked 10. And I'm not even joking. I'm probably making that sound older. Like, it was really bad. I went to local village pubs, because in the villages they didn't care. They used to serve us beer at age 13 and it was fine. But I mean, times have changed, possibly. But you know, when it came to actually going out, I had to wait till I was 18 and had verified ID, and even got turned away. In fact, my first day on my first ever job, I got sent home and had to come back in the next day with ID again, even though I'd done it when I was interviewed, because they didn't believe I was old enough to be working. And not many people have had that experience.
Wow.
So, you know, so if I was dating somebody that was 16 years older than me, it would look like it was 26 years older than me, you know. So, and my issue used to be that I'd have people a lot younger than me would be flirting with me because I looked younger, you know. So, and that was, I always found that really difficult, because, I mean, I used to drink a lot and I was at uni, and, you know, and I had this debate with myself. I'm like, you know, when I'm really hammered and I can't see what's on the floor, you know, I can't really sit there and ID everybody, you know, so it was really difficult. So it's like, oh, 5 years. I mean, I went to uni at 21, I did 4 years, so I was still at uni at like 25, you know, so it was questionable. And then there's 18-year-olds in those clubs, and that's just really scary. You know, and it's difficult, isn't it? But I mean, I've never dated anyone that has been over a 12-month age difference either side. So it's just the way it's always been. You know,
so it's not like you planned that then. It's not like you've set that in stone.
No, it's just the way things have happened and the people I've met, I guess. I mean, I don't really have an issue with it, really. I mean, when I was younger, I used to think a lot about what other people thought, a lot, and it would direct a lot of my decisions. Was, how would this look? What you know, am I, part of my dating criteria was, you know, if I introduce them to my friends, would I be embarrassed or not? You know, and that was part of it. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Now, when you're older, it doesn't matter, and it's different. But, you know, I mean, you look at like Sarah Paulson and Holland Taylor. I mean, that's a huge age gap right there. But they love each other, and, you know, and it's amazing. And I don't see an age gap with anything. And then, you know, I mean, I suppose we're a family show. I'm not trying to use any bad language, but, you know, some people have certain where they do like a big age gap, and that's a legitimate thing too. You know, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as everybody is consenting adults, and that they're mentally well and nobody's being abused or coerced into a situation. And for me, I'd probably say over 20. If you're under 20, I know you think you're an adult, but you're not an adult. It takes a while. You need to have your heart broken a few times before you realise what's going on.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree with that.
You might have had your heart broken a few times, but 20 onwards is when you can make those big decisions, really.
Yeah.
You know?
Vicky, we're agreeing. Are you pleased we're agreeing? We're agreeing. Claire, let's offer you a really
a date.
Let's offer you a scenario. Are you ready? A scenario. Do you think parents have an expectation of their son or daughter's lover?
Yeah, I think you just want the best for them. Do you know what I mean? So again, you're going down the route of, oh, she looks like the girl next door, she'll be lovely for my son. Do you know what I mean? So expectation, you want them, you would like them to, you know, to meet a nice girl or boy, you know, or girl and girl. Do you know what I mean? It depends.
What if though, Claire, I'm going to throw you in the deep end here, right? What if your son was madly in love, and you could see he was madly in love, and you hated her? Would you do steps to say, like I had somebody once say to me, and it was funny actually, that I didn't even notice my mum was doing it, but my mum did it very, very much. Like, I would say, I can't mention my partner's name, but my ex-partner, and okay, oh, he's got a bit of a bag today. He can't do very much walking, and she'll go, well, it's only going to go downhill from here, Nick. Soon you'll be putting him in a care home, and you'll be at home 24/7. It's like she would leave like little hints like that to say, get rid of him.
You see, it's really difficult, because the more you try and put them off, the more they will eccles up and go, no way, you know.
Yeah, they get defensive.
Yeah, well, I assume, like I say, none of mine have been like that yet, because they're all shackled to the bed. They're not allowed out. So it's you want the best for your children, and that's, you know, whoever they fall in love with. You want them to be happy, but like you say, they've got to get their hearts broken a few times to really understand what love is. you know, and that's really hard then as a parent to see your child so upset. You know, my mum's seen it like for over 50 years now, and I'm still not settled, but hey ho. Yeah. Sorry, Sam. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter is currently dating her girlfriend, and they've been together for just over 3 years now. And she's 17, and her and her girlfriend's been together for 3 years. And, you know, I adore her girlfriend. I think she's brilliant. You know, I keep saying to my daughter that I'm going to swap. I says, I'll have her. You can go to, and, you know, you can go to your girlfriend's mum. And, you know, she stays here. You know, she knows I'm joking. You know, we have these jokes. But, you know, I get along really well with her girlfriend. And also I've met her girlfriend's family as well, because we all went for a meal together. You know, I get on well with all of them. And, you know, and I think I'm lucky that I'm quite an open person, so I can, you know, I talk to people and that. So, you know, if her girlfriend was a bit of a, let's say, a female dog, then, you know, I would put my foot down. You know, if she was mistreating my daughter, then I would put my foot down and I would say, look, you know, this can't happen. You know, if they're doing this and they're doing this, it's not right, you know. But luckily, you know, her girlfriend's absolutely lovely, and, you know, and I keep saying to her, when are you going to get married? I keep saying to her, when are you two going to get married?
It's that old-fashioned saying, though, isn't it? You've got to kiss a lot of dogs.
She knows I'm only joking, though. She knows I'm only joking because I don't take a lot seriously. So she knows I'm only joking. So, you know, but I am lucky that I do get along with my daughter's girlfriend. I am very lucky that I do, because some people may not.
Well, Claire, I've got a solution for you, love. We'll give it a couple more years, and if you're still single, we'll get married and just go elsewhere for the sex. just do that. Just go elsewhere for the sex.
Yeah,
and we'll just live our marriage.
Company.
Yeah, you don't mind being called Claire James, do you? Let's just add another name on to the end of your name.
Claire what? Claire James?
Yeah.
Like it.
Married
A big
married in a
loose wedding.
historical
That's what
way.
we need. A big loose wedding.
A big loose wedding. But I do need to finish on saying on this subject before I slightly move on. Talking about Vicky, I really want to concentrate on what you said about the masculinity and masculine, and taking this masculine man away. Well, you can't say any more butch or masculine when you look at me, really.
No, well, I was saying the other
I don't
day.
know why you're all laughing. What's
I
funny?
was watching a movie and I was like, oh, that's Nick. And then I was like, no, it's Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I got it so right.
I love it. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll take that name any day. I really don't mind. But I'm just saying on that subject as well. Do you cringe when you hear of an age gap love? Do you have an expectation for your son and daughter's lover? And would you do something about it if you didn't like them? Have your say. Make sure you talk to us on many of our platforms and our polls. Make sure you join in with our polls this week. But we go on to our final subject. Hot in the news this week, really hot in the news this week. A sex offender who was a subject of a national manhunt this week has appeared before the magistrates in Lincoln today on a Friday. So the Friday just gone. I will name him. Paul Robinson, 56, is charged with escaping.
Paul Robson,
yeah, well done. 56 is charged with escaping from a lawful custody HMP North Sea Camp near Boston on Sunday, the 13th of February. Claire, when we hear stories like this, it scares me as a human being sometimes to even step outside the front door nowadays. But do you think that the streets for our children, even innocent children at 5, 6, 7 years old going to play kick around football in the street, is just not safe anymore?
Personally, no. I just think from when I was growing up, I mean, I know, like you say, you've got to go with the sign of the times and things like that. But, you know, we had no mobile phones. You know, we had the 10p for the red phone box.
Yep.
And it was, you had to be in at a certain time. You know, you weren't, well, I wasn't allowed out after dark. So, you know, when it came to winter time, I was in the garden if I wanted to play out. Kids nowadays seem to be more, I don't say rough and tougher. They don't seem to have any with the authorities, you know what I mean? So you do see street cred, yeah.
Street cred.
I mean, I do feel for them because there's really youth clubs. There's not many of those about like there was in our days. We did have the youth clubs. So, you know, I understand that they want to meet up, but they're meeting up. I'm not saying I didn't drink. I can't even remember that far back. But
look at Vicky's face. I don't believe you, Claire.
Many of us believe her.
You know, but no, going back to the safe, I'm so pleased that my children don't do that. You know what I mean? They, you know, they do go out, they go see their friends, but 9 times out of 10, I don't mind taking them and bringing them back. You know, I don't mind being called mum's taxi because I know that they're safe. And I know that, you know, they're going to drink. I mean, like I say, Harry is 18 this year. He's never smoked. Yeah, he's had some drink. I just think the world is a frightening place. And again, it's another subject, but technology has a lot to do with that. You know, yes, you've got your mobile phone.
You'd be surprised it's not another subject. Vicky, let's pass it on to you. Do you believe this is why technology has got so big? Because in reality, it's that little bit safer.
I think that things weren't safer before. I think a lot of people think they were. I think a lot of people romanticize their childhoods anyway. That's part of human nature. Everything was better. You know, we're born and in our minds, everything is as it should be, and everything after that is something new and it has been introduced to the world. It's really hard to put your head around, you know, things that were quite new, even when you were born. You know, you kind of have this belief that they've been there forever. So when I mean, I'm of a generation that I think I was probably the last generation that experienced pre-technology childhood. My younger brothers are standard millennials that also grew up with technology, whereas I'm the elder millennial that grew up before and had all of that introduced. So, you know, we spent all of our time outside. I mean, I was very lucky to be quite rural. So we used to go off 15, 20 miles. We'd be roaming through the countryside and coming back when it was dark. And it was a street light thing. When the street lights come on, that's when you need to be home. And you got in a lot of trouble if you didn't. I might have done that a lot. I had ADHD. I used to get a little bit involved in whatever I was doing. You know, and yeah, everyone would be up and there'd be parent search parties. I might have been subject to a parent search party, you know, and
you're taking yourself such in the right light here, you really are.
And and now we just know about it more. I mean, I remember we moved down from the north, which I've talked about before. My parents didn't really know anybody in our village, so they weren't really included in a lot of the conversations. But I'd go to people's houses and their mums would be like, "Oh, don't play on this street. You know, this guy's moved in and he's a registered sex offender, he's a paedophile, you need to be really careful." And it was more word of mouth, and people would know where he lived, and you know that you shouldn't go around those streets, and just the people in that area would keep a bit more of an eye out, you know. Whereas now it's all over social media, so social media has a lot to answer for when it comes to generating a lot of fear. And actually it's made things a lot safer, because it means that, you know, our little Facebook group said this before, you know, a dog in our village can't take a poo without it being broadcast on that page about who it is. And even if they got poo bags, sometimes it makes it up there and they're like, "I saw someone today and they had a poo bag, they picked it up," and everyone's like, "Oh, well done, rounds of applause." I mean, this village Facebook, honestly, join some just for the crack, just look what's going on, they're brilliant. You don't get it in cities. Little village Facebook groups, that's where the comedy is. You know, and it's all over there. I mean, I had a stepson up till recently. I still class him as my stepson, and he'd come over here, and when he was with his mother, they were in quite a rough area, so he wasn't allowed out much. He was very much inside, and here they'd be like, "You let him out and you don't know where he's gone." It's like, it's fine, there's 3 or 4 of them together, and anything they're doing, if 5 kids congregate on the skate park, there's someone over there watching them, not even just talking about it, they're watching them. You know, it's just the way things are now. So I think things are safer now than they ever were. I just think no one talked about it before. I mean, it used to be, you know, everyone used to have that crazy uncle that you don't leave the kids alone with, and it was a joke. you know, whereas now it's not acceptable, you know, and people will call it out and talk about it more. So yeah, I think it's a false narrative that things are more dangerous now. Traffic is more dangerous now. When I was younger, no one had a car. We had a company car, so the jobs my parents did. We were one of the only people on the street that had a car. We were really posh. You know, and now everyone's got 2 or 3 cars. Some people have got 3 kids. There's 5 cars on the driveway. You know, there's cars everywhere. There's, you know, people are having accidents and all sorts. So it is, I'd say traffic's far more dangerous now than people being kidnapped and things. It's always happened, and it always will in a way, you know, unless we get into Minority Report kind of areas. It's going to be one of those things. But yeah, it's definitely a false narrative, that.
Before I say my comment, I don't know if you realise, Vicky, but I always finish the show on like a question with you. Has anybody ever watched? There's many more TV programmes out there, but has anybody watched Jerry Springer? You know, like he has his final word at the end of the show. I feel that's our Vicky Pearson. Vicky Pearson's final thought, and then the show just shuts. But I just wanted to say quickly, I think that's very much a culture thing as well, because I've said many times on the show that I went over to Africa a couple of years ago to do some charity work, and mums would leave their children with us all day and go and walk for miles to the next village or whatever, and literally just leave their children with us all day without a shadow of a thought of what can these people do to my kids. And you wouldn't see that in the UK. If a boy walked off with another person or just knelt down to talk to him, the authorities would be there as soon as you could say. Do you know what I mean? So I think we need to find a balance somewhere where it's not just all like just going, but actually there are some kind people out there as well. And I know there's stranger danger and all of that, but we're teaching our kids never really to meet new people, never really to chat, never really, because it's a dangerous world. Monsters under the bed, monsters outside, darkness, make sure you come in because nasty people are out when it gets dark. And I just think we're making our children fearful for adulthood, really, because we're so ingrained with that as kids. But believe it or not, ladies, that brings us to the end of the show. How fast it just flies, doesn't it? That hour just absolutely flies. But what I wanted to mention this evening, if you haven't seen it, is I had the 3 glorious ladies with me last night, and we've done a Loose Links advert. And I really want to make you aware, we are looking for new panellists of Lincolnshire to take the hot seat with us. Are you strong enough to share an opinion and view? Can you agree to disagree? This is the project for you. Make sure you get in contact with us and let us know that you are interested in joining the team. Is it fun, ladies?
Yeah.
So make sure you join us. Thank you for joining us for this week's Loose Links. First of all, can you thank me, the masculine one of the panel this evening that stands out as the stud is me, Nicholas Jones. But I don't know why you're laughing, ladies. I don't get it at all. But joining us this week, the woman that will always make sure she has her say and is listened to, that's Vicky Pearson. The person that tries to find the balance in every conversation, that's Sam J. Hitwell. And just for pure entertainment, it's Claire Brown in May. Join us next week for a new edition of Loose Links. Thank you for letting us keep you company this Tuesday evening. Have a fantastic week, and we'll see you same time, same place next week. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.